Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Virginia City Council Chambers. This is a special City Council meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. The time is 8:05 a.m. We have a significantly large agenda today with some presentations moving forward, so we ask for your patience as we move through this agenda. Pam, because this is a special council meeting, would you please take the roll call?
Motley. Here. Friedlieb.
Here.
Paulson.
Present.
Beyondich.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
Baronzelli. Here. Huffy.
Present. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I just to let everybody know this is the last scheduled City Council meeting for the month of December, and so we're going to move forward. Our Finance Director is not here. Is she by Zoom? By phone call? She's here to answer any questions we may have. So we'll turn, because this is a special council meeting, I'll go through the agenda. Item number 1 is appearances. Brianna Rothstein with Thrive LLC regarding Virginia zoning audit report and recommendations. And we'll have Brianne and then our property, I always get that, I don't know why that is. Jenny Boubinet, our what's the official title? I just keep, Community Development Coordinator, as if I should know that already. Jenny, welcome. Ms. Rothstein, thank you. So please come forward. Make sure that the microphone is to green. And welcome to the City Council meeting. And we're really excited about hearing about this zoning audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to introduce the subject matter briefly and then hand it over to Brianne. As you recall, as part of our Laurentian Chamber of Commerce Housing Institute that the Quad Cities was involved with and City of Virginia, we wrapped that institute up back in November. We've been continuing our work and continuing our discussions as a Quad Cities United for Housing. In our Planning and Zoning Commission level at the City of Virginia, we've been discussing zoning ordinance amendments, which we've briefly talked to you about before as well. We had a great opportunity to hear Brianne present at the Housing Institute. We've had one-on-one meetings with her. We're in pretty constant communication during our housing meetups. So we were offered the opportunity to have a zoning audit done for our zoning ordinance with a focus on housing and how we could maybe make some amendments to that. So Brianne was very gracious to provide that for us. We reviewed it at our Planning and Zoning Commission. I sent it to you in the packet for initial review. This is really an educational component of our 3 main goals that we had coming out of our Housing Institute. And if you have any questions on any of it, I'm here to answer any of that. But again, it's just informational at this point. So I will turn it over to Brianne.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Before you start, Brianne, I just want to recognize in the audience we have Merrick McReynolds from the City Planning and Zoning Department and Brad Gustafson, Councilor-elect from the City of Mount Airy, who's also been heavily involved in this Housing Institute, the housing program as well. So welcome to the council meeting this morning. Brianne?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for having me today. My name is Brianne Rothstein, and as Jenny said, I started my own company in January, so I'm officially an entrepreneur, although I've been a wannabe for a really long time. So the reason I'm here this morning, bright and early, is because I've been involved in the Housing Institute 9 for about the last 6 months, providing information and education and also inspiration to the participants, and so that's what I'm here to do this morning as well, with the context of specifically zoning and how we can reduce the barriers to allowing development in our communities. It says tonight, it's this morning. We're going to just do a quick summary of the audit that we did and the recommended zoning changes. The goal is to have these be very simple changes that can have a very big impact. So it's not to overcomplicate it, it's actually to try to simplify it as much as possible. So just context, I'm sure you all know this, but the state of Minnesota gives the power and authority to cities to do zoning. I think that's really important, especially coming into this upcoming legislative session where they're going to be considering taking some of that power back because they feel that cities haven't done enough to advance housing. We have a housing crisis in the state of Minnesota. We're 100,000 units short statewide for today's demand. And that's a simple macroeconomic analysis. Prices are going up, the demand is going up, and supply is not keeping up. And so we know that because prices are continuing to go up at a pretty quick rate statewide. Certainly different markets have different experiences, but we just finished looking at a housing study for Itasca County, and rents are $200 more than they were with the most compared to the most recently available census data. So things are changing fast in greater Minnesota.
I just ask for some clarity as we move forward to give me a little context. The $100,000 housing storage statewide, does include all types of housing? Thank you.
And that's very important. It's a spectrum of housing. Also, a little more context. Communities have a large authority, large discretion right now to do whatever they want with their zoning. They can say they want pink houses all over the city. You can decide where and the procedural process for how things get built in your community. Again, there's one example of state preemption for group homes. You may be familiar with this. The state has said we're not allowed as cities to prohibit group homes. That's one example, the only example that I'm aware of where the state has taken back a little bit of control due to the need for that in communities. So using that as an example, I think, is important as we think about what they may be coming forward with and how cities can be proactive to kind of do this work before the state catches up. So a few things about your particular zoning code. There are 5 barriers that we've identified. These are applicable to most zoning codes, so you're not unique in this way. These are very general barriers to every city's zoning code. The first and most important and impactful is the lack of permission. There's very few uses that are permitted just by right. So that really constrains private market and industry and business in being able to do what they want to do. We have just developed historically, most of our zoning codes are from the 60s, very, very restrictive, constrained zoning codes. It also gives the city a lot of power then in that case. You know this because you see conditional use permits, rezoning requests, site plan reviews. You're constantly seeing those requests come forward, and that's an example because of lack of permission to just do things. The second is procedural barriers. So all the steps, all the submittal requirements, public hearings, all of the detailed procedural processes that we put industry and businesses and developers through to get to yes. The third is parking requirements. Historically and generally, the requirements for parking have been way more than needed. That's not true in every single district of every single city, but it is true as a general statement. We overpark our developments. Fourth is dimensional standards, so setbacks, height, and impervious surface requirements and things like that. And then the fifth barrier that I see that's the most impactful to development and to industry is infrastructure requirements. Those aren't necessarily zoning, but they're very related. So I think talking about sewer and water fees and park dedication fees and the fees that the city's building permits, all those things. We know you need to take those fees. You have to be able to run a community. You have to be able to run a city. However, they are one of the barriers that I'm not going to spend much time today talking about, but just wanted to identify. So what do we do moving forward? We have some recommendations related to these barriers. The whole goal of this work is to make it accessible and simple to do. The reason that our zoning codes largely are from the 60s and 70s is because it's very overwhelming to think about throwing that out and starting from scratch and having all these policy discussions. So these things are designed to be simple changes maybe very political, but simple from a procedural perspective, like crossing off things, track changes, procedure that you can do, that you can consider. It certainly wouldn't solve all of your zoning needs or issues, but it would help advance housing quicker. So the first thing specific to your code is looking at your permitted and conditional use list in each district and identifying where you can change restricted to conditional or conditional to permitted. Where can we make it easier to get from beginning to end for a new business or a new housing development to come in? We can look at just changing some of those restricted or ends or blanks to Ps. It's really that simple from an actual procedure perspective, but there's a lot of policy discussion that goes into that. In particular, one of them I have seen that seems to be an opportunity is to allow housing in commercial districts. Again, I know that you have commercial districts for the purpose of attracting commerce. However, especially higher density residential developments function more like commercial than they do like a single-family residential in terms of their parking needs, access, and tax base. And so one thing that I think that would be very easy for cities, they've set up those commercial districts for the higher intensity uses already, simply looking at changing and allowing some multifamily housing in commercial districts. The other reason that I think this is a low-hanging fruit recommendation is because there's lots of, again, generally speaking, lots of big old parking lots that are underutilized because we've overparked them as a matter of a zoning code, that there's an acre maybe in the corner of a really large big box parking lot. And we can, the city can do some of that analysis and identify some of those areas and maybe just focus on those. But this would expand the options for developers to come in without having to go through the pain of a rezoning, which you all know is very painful, I'm sure. So other things is looking at dimensional standards, height requirements. Certainly, again, these are completely up to you. You have full discretion and authority to say yes or no to any of these changes. But going from 3 stories to 4 stories or having a standard height per floor that's a little bit higher, or overall height for residential or commercial going up 10 feet, keeping up with today's building standards, and frankly, the ability to more easily make projects financially work, to have a few more units in them. Another dimensional standard I just wanted to hit on that's not on the slide is considering minimum lot sizes. Looking at if you can do an inventory of the number of lots in your community that are vacant, that are currently unbuildable, and considering reducing those minimum lot sizes to make those lots buildable. Again, depending on the city, there's maybe 10 to 100, or Duluth has 1,000 of these lots that are platted and on sewer, water, roads, on all the infrastructure. They're just too small to be considered buildable for the zoning code. Again, it's a change. You're putting a skinnier house with a larger lot coverage. So it is a policy change, but it's something we can do to make it easier to advance housing. I talked about parking requirements already. The other one is impervious surface coverage. So considering increasing your total impervious surface coverage. Again, this is to the point to make it easier to try to get projects to be able to cash flow if you can use more of the lot to do so. So I also, I'll maybe pause there for questions. I have some examples, but do we want to pause for questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. We'll go to Councilor Johnson first, and then I have a question. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you talk about what an impervious surface is and how that relates to a house versus commercial or industrial or that kind of stuff, please?
Sure. So every zoning district has a maximum coverage. So it's basically the amount of the lot that will run off. It's really the original purpose of it is to be able to plan for stormwater runoff. And the stormwater sizing, whether that's a pond or whether that's a pipe, limiting impervious surface coverage, that's kind of the original intent, but what has happened is it's also become a way to restrict the use of the lot, to just a maximum amount of use of the lot. So it kind of adds up. Impervious is hardcover or anything that runs off. And every city has a different definition of what's included or what's not. But generally, it's the parking, the building, and any hardscape that results in stormwater runoff.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Looking through this as was moving forward in anticipation for this presentation, looking at some of the changes that planning and zoning is recommending through this audit. So by moving from 2 stories to 3 stories, which makes sense to me. Most of the stories, other than some of the older buildings are higher, 3 or 4, 5 stories high, some of the major buildings, the bank buildings, et cetera. But for the most part, commercial buildings, particularly housing, has been 2 stories for the exception of our senior housing, which is Ellis Nettles Tower, Columbia and Richelieu Apartments, and the Laurentian. So I think it's a good change to go to 3 stories. I think one of the reasons why in the past was that there was a requirement on the fire code with respect to if you have more than 2 stories, then you have to have sprinkler systems by requirement, which increases the cost historically. So it was limited to like 2 stories back in the day. So making this change and recommending that and then for a B district to be a maximum of 4 stories makes sense to me. So thank you. I appreciate that recommended change as well.
Mayor, one of the things is just kind of keeping up with today's standards, right? You know, if your zoning code was written or adopted originally in the 40s, 50s, 60s, then we're just not keeping up with the technology and the building demands of the market for today. So I think those things also respond to market needs.
Thank you. Any other questions at this pause point? Thank you.
Okay, great. So just a couple of reflections on your actual zoning map. So this goes kind of to the next level. You have a very large percentage of your land guided for single-family residential, not uncommon. Every city I've ever worked for or in, that's true. Some cities are 90% low-density single-family residential. Yours is not that high. I was estimating, looking at your map, I'm sure we could have done a more detailed GIS analysis, but I just eyeballed it. About 50% is zoned for residential, and almost all of that is low-density residential. 20% business, 15% industrial, and then 5% other. You know, there's no right or wrong here. Again, this is your city, it's your authority, but when thinking about the needs that we have for housing and how those demands are not being met by our zoning maps collectively, it's time for individual communities to look at this, otherwise the state's going to.
I have a question, if I may, as we move along, so you don't have to take all these questions in the end. So it's pertinent to the zoning maps and districts. It is planning and zoning, has they looked at, and I'm remiss, there may be something in there with respect to if housing is in the residential areas and the challenge for the city of Virginia, we do not have space available to build these facilities, not only single-family homes, tiny homes, all types of apartment types of homes, whether it's workforce housing, whether it's a market, whatever it is, whatever housing we can fit in these areas. The question I have is that because we're so landlocked, in other communities, I talked to the Mayor's Association meetings about other challenges they have as well, and they're not landlocked like we are, but they have been changing their zoning laws to allow for some mother-in-law quarters, that's what they call it, but it'd be an additional building on their site, changing the zoning requirements to allow with it to do that in order to add some additional housing, whether it be for rental or whether it be for, you know, a small family looking for a transition or whatever the case may be. So is there anything in this audit that addresses that at all?
Yes, there is a mention of accessory dwelling units.
Okay, thank you.
That is a very attractive topic to planners. And it is an important thing to consider. However, it's very, very difficult. So it's not going to solve our housing crisis. It's going to be one of those cogs in the wheel. But when you think about how many accessory dwelling units would make up 30 units and how many people would have to be able to afford to put a accessory dwelling unit and connect to sewer and water and the infrastructure required to do that versus one 30-unit building, you're going to get a lot more efficiency and bang for your buck to get 30 units in one building than 30 accessory. But it's a cog in the wheel. It's an important thing to consider.
I'm all for all those things I just said, because we're landlocked. If we don't have those opportunities, how do we at least provide something in that regard? So being a cog in the wheel, something to consider. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And allowing a little bit more intense use of your existing land because it's already on sewer, water, and roads and sidewalks and curb and gutter and stormwater, sometimes stormwater, and small utilities, electric, gas. The cost to do that in a greenfield is prohibitive. So if you're like, oh, well, maybe we can annex some land on the edge of town, the cost to extend the infrastructure, it just does not make the deal work. Even in the most hottest markets, that's a challenge. So I do think looking at your existing underutilized parcels and considering upzoning those or allowing higher intensity, like multifamily and commercial, that's a very easy thing to do that would add more opportunity. And I'm sure you have discussions about this. A project comes in, it's not zoned because there's no land zone for it anywhere, so they're picking up property they think is good. Then you have this major controversy. I'm just guessing because I've been all over the state, right? A few people cause a huge stir, and then you're standing up here trying to vote against your neighbors and your constituents. So doing this proactively, just identifying, even if it's 6 sites where we're going to allow multifamily here, rezoning them ahead of time so that you don't have to have those fights. That's going to be the easiest way for a landlocked community to add more intensity, more density, and more tax base.
Okay, then I have one more question. So by doing that, by planning this ahead of time, changing the zoning, or expanding it to allow for additional housing, multi-unit housing, we're talking about right now. So if we have a commercial piece of property that's vacant, or we have a commercial property that is currently zoned commercial, and the individual owns the building, so by eliminating a commercial structure and replacing that with a housing complex, if we were to change that zoning, how would that affect our tax base with respect to residential as opposed to replacing a commercial property with a residential property? So I'm sure this is in the audit someplace.
It's not in the audit, but it's in the presentation.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay.
Because, no, good segue.
Okay, thank you.
Jenny knew that might be a question, so we kind of prepared some case studies. This is not a data analysis, this is a snapshot. So I do want to say that these are anecdotal, and you could do a lot more data analysis, but these are some findings based on the case studies, not based on a full analysis of your entire tax base. So some reflections, we took, 8 different pieces of property, and we looked at the estimated market value per acre, because you're talking about the use of the land, the efficiency of the use. If it's on an acre in the city on sewer water, that's going to be more efficient use. We found that adaptive reuse, existing buildings converted to housing, actually have, because they're on small lots in your already developed areas, they actually have the highest per acre tax value. And I'll show you a couple of examples. And then also multifamily generates second most highest tax base per acre, even compared to industrial and commercial. Now, again, especially industrial, they're usually larger acres, right? So the estimated market value total will be maybe higher. However, the infrastructure needed to accommodate that development, because it's sprawled out, it's on a larger lot, may be more. So we'll look at some examples. And again, just before I show these examples, this is just pure estimated market value. It's not a fiscal impact study that compares the tax base generated with the demand for services. So I'm just going to say that right now. It doesn't look at the cost side of things. It just looks at the value side. So we just again kind of picked these. This is an industrial jobs project. This is the thing cities want, every single city in the state of Minnesota. We need more industrial, we need more jobs. It creates a really high tax base. The total market value is $700,000, so that's good. The per acre is $141,000 per acre for this building. The Holiday gas station, small lot, commercial, provides a service to the community, probably thought of as a good tax base generator. The total value on this is $151,000. It's only on 1 acre. So the estimated market value is $151,000. So a little bit more than your jobs project because it's on a smaller lot. And then go to apartments. Again, we just kind of tried to pick a couple of apartment buildings within the city. This one's on 3 acres. It's valued at $1.5 million. And so the per acre estimated market value is $466,000. This one is valued at $706,000. This one's valued at $151,000, and this one's valued at $1.5 million. So just the sheer valuation of the property as well, because apartments generate revenue, and the revenue is how they determine the value on a commercial property. Like, what is the productive value of this? Apartments, their cash flow is what sets largely, well, I don't know if that's true in all counties, but that's how I've seen assessors value it based on their cash flow. And then looking at a single family home. So these are on smaller lots, right? Even smaller. And so when you're talking about redevelopment in existing areas, the total value of this is $300,000, but the per acre value is $536 because it's only on a little over a half an acre. And then looking at the more like downtown area, historic development on much smaller lots. So your bang for your buck is actually really high in these areas. And so looking at the smaller lots, you're generating more value per acre if you have smaller lots. I guess that's kind of obvious, but I just wanted to point it out. And then looking at, this one looks like a newer, I think you mentioned Laurentian earlier. The total value on this is $3.2 million. And that's an estimated market value of $581,000 per acre. So these are just trying to sort of level set here. Like, now, does the first example, the road machinery, does that need as much police, fire, and other kind of city offered services as a residential property? No, it usually doesn't, depending on, I guess, if there's a lot of fires in an industrial building, but usually it doesn't. Usually it generates a low demand for services. So that is an important consideration, but I just wanted to point out that the value of your multifamily is actually really high in this community relative to some of the other examples. And then this one was the highest per acre. It's presumably right in your nearby, like right in this area. You can tell just kind of by the design of and when it was constructed. It's a bank, so it's a very, very high value commercial, use, but it's on a very small lot. And so the per acre is very high on this. And so that's just kind of why we wanted to show some examples and some different ways of looking at things in terms of tax base and kind of dispel also the myth that industrial is your best tax base generator. It creates jobs, which then have a good effect on the sales tax and the, other sorts of revenue generators. But just looking at your property values and market values, I wanted to point some of these examples out. Oh, and then I have one more. This one's actually the highest. It's a historic rehab. And again, tiny little lot, lots of units, high value. Okay, that ends my presentation. In terms of next steps, Jenny is already rolling with your zoning code updates. So what you can consider as you move forward is these little changes, big policy discussions, big politics, very small logistical changes that you can make to make it more business friendly in your community.
I just have one question for you, maybe, and for Jenny. The example that you gave for the Ivy Manor apartments, if you know this answer to this question, the Ivy Manor, which is owned and operated by the AEOA, area economic op, do they pay property taxes? Does the AEOA, which is an agency, do they pay property tax? So when we're looking at the value, and the example is, you know, what's the value and how the rate is going? I don't know if they do or not. So I would look for clarification on that. And I'm not asking you for that, but I'm just curious about that. And then before we answer any other questions, I just want to recognize Teresa Applewick, the Executive Director of the Laurentian Chamber of Commerce. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Councillor Motley.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question for you, or maybe Britt. Are any of these apartment complexes that she mentioned, are they in a TIF district, or are they actually, they are not, so we actually are generating money?
HRA, I believe, and this is, I'm sure he's on, he should have been better, it probably does a payment in lieu of taxes. So they do a payment for their thing. But the point of the thing is that we should also be looking at multifamily, not just single family was the point of the.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say that based on the tax classification, so the estimated market value is multiplied by the tax classification percentage. So all land uses have different tax classifications. And if you're doing an affordable deal and the city approves 4D, it's a program, then the tax classification goes way down and you don't get very much tax off of that. But market rate multifamily is valued at, just the regular sort of tax classification for multifamily, which is actually higher than single family. The percent that you multiply by the estimated market value by is actually higher than single family. So you're also getting that, assuming you're not participating in a 4D program.
Okay, and then this is an ancillary, not for you to answer, but just a statement that something for us to take a look at as elected body and our staff about the fact that when the county issues the values of the property based upon, and then our levy and the taxes are based upon the estimated total market value, and that's all lumped into one and based upon that, and that's how they figure out your taxes and how they're going to, what's going to be assessed, who's going to be assessed what, whether it's going to be increased or decreased. Part of that is when you have a entity that may be on the government rolls and not paying directly property taxes, but is added in to the value of our total estimated market value, which if that's included and say there's $10 million worth of that in here, that's, even though they're not paying taxes, whatever that tax capacity based on the value could be distributed to the residential and other commercial properties to pay a higher for that purpose. So we have to take a look at that. It has nothing to do with the housing, because housing is going to be the key to our future. So thank you for that. Thank you for your presentation. Anybody else have any questions or comments as we move forward from the elected body? Anybody from the audience that'd like to make a comment? Mr. Brad Gustafson, I'm sorry, before we go there, I didn't see your line on there. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I went to the St. Louis County Land Explorer, and the 2024 properties tax statement for Ivy Manor was $14,494.
Thank you. So that clarifies things with the tax value is. Whether they paid or not, I don't know. Let's find that out. Thank you. Mr. Gustafson.
Mr. Mayor, Council, they do pay property taxes for the Ivy Manor.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thanks for that clarification, Mr. Gustafson. Okay. Anybody else? Councilor Johnson, and then we'll go back to Ms. Rothstein. Brianne, excuse me.
Thank you very much for coming and clarifying so much information. I really appreciate what you're talking about when you're talking about changing so it's a little bit easier. My sister's a city councilor down in Norwood Young America, and they built a multi-use, multi-family building on the site of an old dairy, literally in their downtown. And the first floor now houses the sheriff department, police department, library, and their city offices, and then there's 4 or 5 stories above that is mixed with family housing and senior housing, and it has created the building basically pays for itself, and then there's the tax on top of it. So I know that in the outskirting of the metro area down there, repurposing property and doing that is helping those communities to grow and thrive. Norwood grew so much that they're on the edge of maybe at the next census moving into a different classification of city because of that. And I think we have, the mayor mentioned that we are landlocked, which is true. However, we have spaces within the town that we could zone differently or get rid of some of those. Jenny, I'll be sending you some specific questions that would allow for smaller housing for folks who don't want to have a family, but they want to own their own home. We have plenty of property around town that if we put a couple of the vacant lots together, could be a nice multifamily residential unit that wouldn't stick out, or it would look like part of the community. So truly appreciate all the time all of you have put into this, knowing that we need to start now to start making some changes so that in 10 or 15 years, we're not going totally scrambling, because all that infrastructure, all those grants, all that stuff takes time, and it's only going to get more expensive. So thank you all very much for your work on this. I want to make sure I made eye contact with Mary back there, because I know this has been something she's been doing since she sat on the council. And I hope and I look forward to moving forward with various types of housing in the city of Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. And once again, thanks you for the presentation. This is going to be very helpful as we move forward. And Jenny, for all your hard work as well, and staff, and the Housing Institute as well. Thank you to our planning and zoning, those who are in the Housing Institute, and for the host of some of these events, the Laurentian Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for everything. Hopefully we'll be moving forward and find a way to inject lots of housing in within our curtilage that we have available. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the council of the elected body? Okay, before we move anything from the audience, before we move to the next item on the agenda. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item number 2, under appearances, Matt Reed from SCH. 2A, update on the plans and specifications for the 2024 alley infrastructure project and plan to address removal of sidewalks. Morning, Matt.
Good morning. At the meeting last Tuesday, it was discussed as to whether or not we wanted to put sidewalks back on the alley project. And since that meeting, Britt and I have had some discussions, and I think what we're going to do, if it's okay with the council, is we are going to we're going to leave everything as is for right now with the sidewalks in, and we're then going to put an alternate in the bid package to remove the sidewalks. That will give us a little more time to be able to poll the residents, keep the project moving, get it bid, and then the council can make a decision based on what the numbers look like, and of course, based on what the residents would like to see out there. So that's really the update. There was really no action on this one, other than just if the council had any questions or had any issues with that.
Questions? Councilor Motley, then over to Councilor Freely. Councilor Motley.
Thanks, Matt, for coming. Did you get a chance to talk to some of the residents that might be affected by the sidewalk not being there to see what they thought?
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Freely.
I guess I haven't driven by, or there can't be that many side, are we talking between 6th Avenue and 5th Avenue on 8.5 Street there?
There's that, and then there's a couple of spots where there isn't very
Beyond
much.
that?
You're right. From a cost perspective, it really isn't going to be all that significant one way or the other. But if it's something that the residents don't need, the city doesn't want to have to maintain in the future, whatever the case may be, or if they do want it too, and that's fine. But it's not going to have a significant cost implication one way or the other on the project. So if that's where you were going with that, I don't know, but.
I just was trying to identify precisely where it was, because in my mind, it's very little.
It is.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Any other questions regarding item 1 or 2A? Okay, moving on to 2B, adopt the resolution approving the submittal of an active transportation program application for the Southside Silver Lake connection. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. We did put in a letter of interest back in, I think it was October, for both item B and item C for two different grant applications through the Department of Transportation. Southside Silver Lake Trail is being defined as the connection from the Tennis for All building up to the Silver Lake Trail at the baseball field by 3rd Street. So there's, if you go up to the Silver Lake Trail, we ran a portion of it down the hill on the 8th Avenue. And it's there now to tie into. And so the whole idea is to try to provide some, we don't really have any trails. We got a lot of sidewalks and whatnot, but we don't have a lot of trails or any access, any way for the residents that live down in the south side in that area by Tennis for All, where there's a lot of residential, of course, to get on a trail and connect into the trail system directly. So we had identified that as a good application for the active transportation and the safe routes to school, which is the next item. So the applications are due the 17th of January. I have them just about completed, with the exception of needing this resolution and a couple other items that we're still working on, but just looking for the council's action on this, and I'd certainly answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, under item 2B, the request at this council meeting, which we can act upon, adopt the resolution approving submittal of an active transportation program application for the Southside Silver Lake Trail connection, with applications due by January 17th of 2025. Questions, comments, actions by the council? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for this. And then will this is just basically making a commitment to doing this type of a project? It's not any, or is it based on, you've got something in your, the AT infrastructure grant amount. So are we approving to make an application for that grant?
Yes.
This resolution?
Yes, correct.
Okay, I would move that forward.
Councilor Paulson moves to approve item 2A, which is adopting the resolution approving the submittal of an active transportation program application for the Southside Silver Lake Trail connection. Is there support? By Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2C, adopt the resolution approving submittal of an application to the Safe Routes to Schools program for the Southside Silver Lake Trail connection. We have applied for this on a couple other occasions, but have not been successful. Is that correct, Britt? Okay, thank you. Matt, it's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, looking for questions, comments, or action by the council.
I'll move the resolution.
Councilor Motley moves to approve the resolution, adopting the resolution, approving the submittal of an application to the Safe Routes and to School program for the Southside Silver Lake Trail connection. Is there support?
Further discussion.
By Councilor Freely, supports for further discussion. Further discussion, Councilor Freely.
And just briefly, so for both of these applications, will there be any match that's necessary from the city so that we would be planning financially for whatever our costs would be?
There is a match. They will only cover the construction of the project, so any of the design and the plans and all of that, the city would need to cover. So there will be a match of some sort.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. Councilor Beyondich.
Is there an opportunity to reach out for grant dollars?
100%. These are very competitive grants. We applied for the same ones for Borgen Road, that project, and we only got the active transportation. So there, if we get either one of these grants, which would be wonderful, we'd start working on other funding sources right up in tune with the Eastern Recreation area. If you recall, this connects to the tennis building, and we talked about coming in from the other way with the Eastern Recreation area. So this is just a piece of that puzzle that we're trying to get this funding for. It's worth a try. You know, like Matt said, there's no other trails that connect south side to north side. So this is hopefully our start to that connection.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Oh, this is the adoption of the resolution approving the submittal of an application to the Safe Route to School program, Southside Silver Lake Connection.
I apologize, Mayor. I thought that would take.
You're on that? You're on board with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, item 3, building and grounds. Adopt a resolution ordering the repair/removal of unsafe structures. Do we take this individually? Item 3.A, 604 4th Avenue South. And any specific information with respect to that, that would be next to Paula's place, is that correct? Please identify yourself for the record, and welcome to the City Council meeting.
Patricia Palo. I am an adjacent property owner of the 604 4th Avenue South property. The resolution has a couple of errors on the address. In number 1 and number 6, it should read south and not north.
Okay, thank you.
The resolution addresses basically the exterior walls. There are also issues with missing shingles. The roof appears to be sagging. The windows don't have any screens. There's no permanent heat source. And there's a hazard tree on the property that's separating from the rest of the tree and is falling onto my property. The other trees are destroying my garage floor and rubbing on my roof. I was told that the tree board decided this tree was a hazard and was going to have to be removed, but it's still there. There is a tow strap wrapped around part of the section of the tree that's falling, and it's tethered to a clothesline frame. I would like this order to be revised to address all of these issues.
Thank you, Patricia. And I've been to your house on a number of occasions and looked at that property, and what you say is completely accurate. The lines that go, that the tree is encroaching on, I think is a phone line of some sort. They've been notified, nothing's been done about that. We are aware of all those issues. They have been reported to our blight department. I did that personally as well. And so I believe that your request is reasonable and prudent and should be added to the resolution from my perspective, based upon my visits and then our staff over there as well. So can we amend that resolution? We could do that with adding those items onto that as well. So just if you just stay up here for one moment, please, and we'll see if there's any questions or questions from the council with respect to this by making that adjustment to the resolution that's before us regarding the order of the repair removal with respect to this unsafe structure. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. This might be for legal. What do we need to do to address to not only address them, but to add that language into the resolution? Do we need to take can we just add what she's saying, or does it actually have to go from our code officials to actually document that? Is there a process we need to take or follow beforehand?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. So to keep the process moving, essentially what you could do is you could you could take action on the resolution as amended and then make that contingent upon verification by the building official or inclusion of those items into the report.
So do you want to list those items one more time so our clerk can get them down?
You have them? Okay, if you could just
Or do you have them?
repeat. Okay, we do have them available to that. Thank you.
So I would move to, I guess, amend the resolution to include the items that Ms. Palo is describing upon approval by our city staff.
Very good, thank you. A motion by Councilor Paulson. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? We're adding those things to the resolution. We're amending the resolution to include those things, Ms. Palo, and then we're going to send it to our staff for action. Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that'll take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 3B, adopt the resolution ordering the repair removal of unsafe structures at 1201 7th Avenue South. And do we have any specifics with respect to that? I know it's in the packet. Some, I think some photos.
One's a garage that's pretty debilitated, as you can see in the photos. The house is unfortunately vacant, so this one is going to take some time to find the responsible party. And thus, we are going to try to obtain a court order to do the work ourselves, which is what will probably in the end ultimately occur.
Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. There is actually more blight items out on the lawn as well. Is that something that can be mitigated?
Definitely, that can be mitigated. It wouldn't be through the court action, we would just take care of it ourselves, but
Okay.
it's been a process trying to find if there's a responsible party. Nobody so far has come forward for probate, so we're still trying to work on a process on this one.
I'll move the resolution.
Councilor Paulson moves to approve Resolution 3B, which is the remediation order repair and removal of unsafe structures at 1201 7th Avenue South. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Maya Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Move to item 5 on the agenda under finances. Adopt a resolution for the final payment to the Minnesota Boardwalk for the Silver Lake Trail Phase 2B in the amount of $49,392.50. Final payment. And Britt, we're satisfied with the work is complete. They've made those adjustments, and based upon the contract, I know that Brian has taken some steps to address some of the issues of partial repairs or things of that nature. But
We do have Matt Reed here too. Matt's brought forward this pay.
thank you. Matt, if you could provide us some additional information with respect to this. If you can hold it one moment, my eyesight was, I was remiss with my eyesight, so we have to move back to item number 4 on the agenda, which is adopt a resolution authorizing the submittal of a grant for the Minnesota Department of Education for the library ADA restroom project.
So moved.
By Councilor Johnson and supported by Councilor Freely. Further discussion for that? Councilor Motley?
Well, it just, under Building Grounds and Report, it says adopt resolution authorizing submittal, but then in my packet, it says to accept funds from the Department of Education. Are we accepting funds or are we just authorizing a submittal of a grant? On page 31.
I thought we authorized to submit a grant already on this project.
No, this is another grant.
We did not?
This is another grant,
This is a different grant.
different grant.
And I understand it's just my
Okay.
packet says
Yep.
accept funds.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Okay, submit a grant and accept funds for? Add that? Okay, adding that to the resolution as for the vote today. Thank you, Councilor Motley. So we're looking for that. Was it moved and supported? Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Now, I apologize for the interruption there. So the final payment with respect to Minnesota Boardwalks. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. The work is complete. There were some items that were brought up, and they actually were all taken care of prior to the grand opening or the ribbon cutting that we had. So everything should be good to go. Project is under warranty for a year, so if we have some issues next year for whatever, I don't expect any. The repairs they made, everything seemed to work fine, but just for a little bit of reassurance for the council and everybody that we do have a 1-year warranty on the project. So I would recommend final payment, and we do have all their paperwork, so we can consider that one done for now.
Thank you.
I'll move approval.
Moved to approve by Councilor Freely for the final payment. Is there support? By Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. When is the warranty date?
I would have to look and see what we had. I can get back to you on that. I'd have to double check.
Okay, I'd appreciate that because my concern is that they had to do some did they have to do some seeding and other stuff around when it comes up and down? They had really disturbed the shoreline quite a bit, so I'm curious about that. And thank you for the 1-year warranty. The other thing I want to have at least a discussion about is they were 2.5 to 3 months over schedule, and I don't see any repercussions in our final payment based on them not keeping the schedule. And I'd like to have at least that discussion about what that looks like. So what should it look? So how many days were they overdue? And what was the daily fee for that? And should we be finding someplace in the middle to meet that, hey, you guys did not keep your time frame. You had a contract, we extended it once, you came back to us and said, we need more time. We said, absolutely not. You should have had this done in whatever the original date was, August. And it was, you know, they'd be here for 2 weeks and then nothing for 3 weeks, and then they come back for a day. So I would really like to even get an apology or some logic. I know they told us they're manufacturing, but they're the manufacturers, was my understanding. They're all inclusive. So I would like, I'm not comfortable agreeing to the final payment at this time. They may need to wait until next year unless it has something to do with our grants, because I know we were having, it was so far overdue that some of our grants were having some concerns as well. So I think that they need to understand that when they have a contract with the city, they can't just not honor that contract.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Matt?
I don't have that information right at the moment, but I can pull it together and send it to Britt, and she can disseminate it out if you'd like, if that's the direction the council would like to go. And as far as the grant question, Councilor Johnson, Britt, we're square on LCCMR, right? Was there anything else that we needed to finalize?
We're good.
By the end of the year? Yeah, okay. So I can defer to Britt on that one.
So I guess I would make a motion to, and I don't want to table it because I want there to be discussion if there needs to. I would make a motion to defer this payment until we have additional information about the penalties of their late completion.
Okay, if could you hold that motion in abeyance, because we have one on the table now to approve this payment. So it has been moved and supported to approve the payment, the final payment, and the requested information will be disseminated with respect to Councilor Johnson. So it has been moved and supported to make the final payment. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. Brett, does this need to be paid by the end of the year? Is there a time frame on it? Could we back down the motion until the next committee of the whole meeting to have further discussion?
Well, the maker of the motion would have to rescind, the second would have to rescind, and then there would have to be another motion put on the table to move this to the next committee of the whole meeting for further discussion.
Right, and that's what I was asking.
Yeah, if I might,
Yeah, who is the maker of the motion?
I believe.
Councilor Freely?
Yeah, I guess I'm of the mind that the projects have been completed. It's being utilized by the public at this point in time. I know there was discussion at some point with regard to getting them moving on this thing, and that there was the threat of some potential fines of some sort on a daily basis. I don't know that those were imposed. Whether they were or they weren't, it was completed. Granted, it was after the fact, after the time frame that was originally agreed to, but there are times when things come up that they need to address that maybe it needed to take a longer time, and the manufacturing piece was one of those. Creating the connection points was, I think, trickier than they had originally anticipated. And there is some groundwork that needs to be done as well, but I just don't think it's worth holding up the payment for the completion of the project, and we can address those beyond that point. I'm ready to move forward with voting in favor of providing them their final payment, because the project has been completed, and I think satisfactory.
Okay.
Looking for.
Very good. It has been moved and supported for the final payment. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those, Matt?
Not to belabor it, but if you would like me to give you the, okay.
No, yeah, go ahead. You have some?
Nope, go ahead. Maybe vote on this, and if it fails, I can provide some additional information.
Okay, thank you. And you could provide it anyway,
Okay.
if it passes, right? So it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
Roll call, please, Pam.
Paulson,
Aye.
Beyondich,
Aye.
Johnson,
No.
Aaron Huffy,
Aye.
Motley,
Yes.
Friedlieb.
Aye.
A motion passes 6-1. Thank you. Any additional information, Matt, that you can provide?
Yeah, so I can answer the warranty question. I called that up just so that I could at least get you that information. The warranty would expire 1 year from November 20th. So November 20th of 2025 would be the warranty information, or the warranty expiration.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, move to item 6 under finance, adopt the resolution to approve the purchase of 2 pickup trucks with plows from Kennewaukee Auto. I did have a preliminary discussion, I'm sure it did with staff as well, with Jim Rosvet, our Public Works Director. There are 2 trucks that are 1999 and 2000. The plow systems on there no longer have the parts. The springs break, you can't replace those. So looking at those kind of things, they're looking to, he's looking for adoption to approve the purchase of these 2 pickup truck with plow. I think instead of a straight plow, which they currently have on there, they put a V plow in there so it's easier for them to plow the alleys and move those windrows back into the streets so they can collect them in the alleys in the streets as opposed to leaving the windrows in the alleys. So all those things in conjunction with many other things are some fodder that was provided with respect to the request to purchase these pickup trucks. The question that we would have, and I'm sure that is this, are these pickup trucks, is there an finance available, money funding available for that? Do we know? I know Sherry's on the line maybe, or?
It's in,
It's in the packet. Okay, thank you. Okay,
I would move the approval since it has been allocated in the
with the bond.
equipment bond.
Thank you very much. That was my question. It's been moved by Councillor Freely to approve these purchases. Is there support?
Support.
By Councillor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think that we did have plenty of discussion on this, and it was allocated in the 2023 bond, and those were funds that we actually have to spend, or they would go back, period, or would they reduce the bond
They would reduce the bond at the last year.
at the very last year? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. It has been moved and supported to approve. Is there support? Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item under finance, number 7, the November 2024 financial reports.
Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Paulson.
Sorry, if I may just ask one more quick question about the last item.
Sure.
So on that 2023 equipment bond, that was rolled into the levy for 2024. So we will not be seeing an increase in the levy for 2025 based on that 2023 capital equipment bond. Okay, I just wanted that clarified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have that next item, which is the November financial reports. As you have them in your packet, is there anything that you can disseminate, Britt, that's of that bodes for discussion?
I don't have anything significant to point out, but I am here to answer questions. If anybody has any questions, and Sherry is on the line.
Okay, Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I did notice on the overtime comp time email that we received that there is significant difference between 2023 and 2024 in police, fire, and I believe it was in recreation. Are we doing anything to alleviate that? I know I feel like we're short-staffed in our police department. In terms of our recreation department, I think we're working towards some of that alleviation. And then with fire, how do we propose maybe getting a better handle on that for the upcoming fiscal year of 2025?
You're absolutely right. We are short-staffed in both, all public safety, actually, and it's really just an interesting if you're into that kind of thing, of why people are not going into those fields anymore. It's very hard to find, so we do need to figure out something. I do know the police department is going to be coming to the personnel committee with an idea for a model for a community officer model, where we kind of groom our own police officers, kind of like the single role thing at the fire department, which works very well for us. We're hoping to do kind of the same thing with the other departments, the police department mainly. In the fire department also, I think a few of our single roles, I think 3 of them, just graduated the paramedic program, which is wonderful too, because then that they can, once they obtain their fire or licensure, they can move into the full-time roles, which also reduces overtime then, because they're 24-hour shifts, not the 12-hour shifts. So there's ways that those departments are trying to do something.
Working towards some type of a solution for 25.
Yep, and then recreation, I will take a look. Again, it's nature of what's going on, and I want to make sure that was coded right too, because if there's
That
snow
was my
plow
other
in there,
question. Yeah.
the snow plow, if they're plowing snow, it goes into the plowing budget, but it gets reported under recreation department. But it's
So if we
coded
could
to.
maybe look at
So
that,
we'll
'cause
look at
that
that and
went high.
verify that, because that will jump that up like dramatically, because we do want them to plow, and they are responsible for the golf course, the Angelo Moore's Event Center, the tennis building, and so they do go out early in the morning to get those open for the public. However, it does get weird in that one report. So let me look at that if that's okay.
Okay.
Make sure that's correct.
And then in terms of if we have not budgeted for that overtime in those departments that are actually over and above 2023, how does that, what happens at the end of this, December here?
Everybody, we all know, be cognizant of our overtime. We all watch that very closely. It affects the rest of their budget. If you overspend on your personnel, you're going to have no purchase available for any other thing you might need. So it's a balance, and they all have to watch that bottom line.
So we won't know that until the audit.
Kind of, yeah. We've been doing the monthly review with even just the staff, because as we do these monthly reports, gives us the time to talk to the staff too. So it's been helpful. Everybody's been able to see very much closer than we've had previous years what's going on in their budget and where they're at.
Thank you so much.
It is helpful.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. And Britt, if I remember right, a lot of the overtime for the fire department is covered through grants when they're doing, or other funding sources, because of the USAR team, Minnesota Task Force 2, and other stuff like that. So a lot of times they try to get their training in on their 24-hour shifts, but sometimes they can't. So there's some other stuff there. And then my other question, because I don't remember, is how does the overtime get tracked when they take the comp time instead? Like, is that filtered into that overtime as a document, as part of the overtime time? But it's budgeted as comp time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So it is not, you will not see that reflected on the financial statement for that department, because it's taken as regular time.
Okay.
So it's still just for simplicity's sake, a non-fire, non-police, a 20/80 hour is still 20/80 hours, whether you took it as comp or you took it as, so it's actually a little more beneficial for us to have them use it as comp time.
Yes, okay.
Overtime.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. So any more questions? Thank you, Matt. Any more questions on the November 2024 financial reports? Do we need a motion to accept those?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments with respect to the November financials? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to under finance, item 8, which is the last item under the finance agenda, is discuss the purchase of the 2 E-Z-Go beverage carts for the golf course. We've had some significant discussion about this. I think it came down to the lower end or the higher end with respect to that. There's been some discussion with the copper nickel with respect to partial investment in that and then providing additional services on the course. The ones we have are from way back in the day, and they were actually aren't beverage carts, so these coolers were purchased to put on the back of a cart. So we have Brian Silber, who is excellent timing here. We're talking about the purchase of the 2 beverage carts for the golf course. Brian, thank you. Looking for discussion with respect to this. First, we'll go to the right side of the aisle this time, Councillor Johnson, and then over to Councillor Paulson. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move the purchase of the 2025 both Cushman Oasis for a total of $45,800 plus taxes and fees and everything else.
Okay, Councillor Johnson moves to approve the carts for the total amount of $45,800 plus tax and license. I don't think there's any license, but any taxes. Is there support for that?
All support.
Councillor Friedlieb supports. You will adopt the resolution. Yes, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question. Do these golf carts, or do they, or did they, or will they generate any revenue to offset the expense? Not discussing an actual leasing topic with the copper nickel, but how do they benefit the taxpayers? Do they generate revenue?
Yes, and because well, this is theoretically, not directly. How they generate revenue is that people that are interested in golfing and having a beverage at the same time will not come to our course if beverage is not available on the course. There are people that don't need a beverage, that they'll just golf no matter what. But this is part of that service that we need to offer on the golf course, or want to offer on the golf course, to give that golfer a better experience. There's golf courses everywhere. They'll go to Wolf Ridge, they'll go to Evelyn, they'll go anywhere else that has beverage service. If we don't, it's.
But we currently provide beverage service, and is there a line item for revenue on what that beverage service generates in
We
revenue?
do not provide beverage service.
We've got the golf carts because I know the people that were.
Copper Nickel manages the golf carts. They have their liquor license, and so they use our golf carts.
And it's
Right,
in
but
it's in their contract.
Yeah, but there were people doing bev karting this past summer
Hired by the Copper Nickel.
on the city's current golf carts.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so how does that generate revenue is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, it really never generated in the past.
So that's why I'm having a tough time justifying $48,800 when we have more of a public safety issue with the nets and golf balls flying over on 18th, or not 18th, whatever that, I think it is 18th. And I'm
That'd be
just.
number 2.
And I'm concerned that we are putting this purchase ahead of a potential litigation if somebody gets hurt again, and not putting public safety first in terms of netting to protect, or some sort of barrier that would protect people from walking along that street and residents getting hit by golf balls or homes getting hit by golf balls. So at this point, if there was a lease agreement, I would be comfortable with the purchase, knowing that lease agreement would possibly pay for the payments. But I feel that the issue on public safety is more important than a non-revenue generating expenditure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So before we go to Councillor Johnson, I just want to address that. I think I understand what you're saying, Councillor Paulson, about that, but these are two different environments. We are looking at some additional fencing, which we've provided, some additional protection for those people over there on the golf. That's already in the works to try to do that. I believe the purchase of these golf carts are way overdue. They can generate some revenue, and in speaking to our Park and Rec director, there's ways in which to sell advertisements on those golf courses by the liquor established in the POP and having the exclusive agreements about that and generating some piece of the liquor sales on the golf course, which Copper Nickel has agreed that they would talk about that. But, not having those in place right now, there's a potential to generate some revenue for us moving forward to offset some of the costs. But for me, they have to be purchased, in my opinion. We have to fix the issue on the number 2 hole with respect to the chain link fence and those kind of things. But to hold other things in abeyance in order to accomplish that public safety is priority. But I'm fully supportive of moving forward with the purchase of these carts. It's for the long term, a long lifespan on these that are well overdue for replacement. And you can't get parts for these anymore, can't repair them. So I think they're well overdue moving forward. So I'm going to support this. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and I totally agree with you that we're looking at 2 different topics. I think that when we're looking at the service to the golf course, we're not only serving our individuals, but we're serving people from literally around the country every summer for 6-ish months, depending on the weather. And I think that the revenue comes in when those people stop at gas stations, when they stop at Target or Walmart, or not Walmart, but Aldi's, when they stay in our hotels, when they go to our restaurants. So I think that this is one of those amenities that will bring in indirect revenue to the city. And I think that knowing that we're going to be looking at some possibilities, it would be, I would feel irresponsible if I didn't purchase these and I don't golf. But I know that when there's tournaments, the golf carts, when I've pretended to golf in golf tournaments for the chamber, I know that those golf carts come around every 2 to 3 holes, and the people I'm golfing with put in a lot of revenue into that. So I will be supporting this as a way of planning for the future and of supporting additional growth at the golf course and at the potential at the leasee's space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Motley?
So I would have to agree that I do think we need to upscale and update our golf carts. I would have liked to see a lease agreement put in place with the Copper Nickel to have them make monthly payments to us to purchase these 2 pieces of equipment, since it's without a doubt going to help their business and it does not produce any revenue to the taxpayers of Virginia per se. All revenue goes to the Copper Nickel for the 2 golf carts that we purchase on the taxpayers' dime. And if I understand correctly, when Brian was here last, the current golf carts that the Copper Nickel are using that the city owns are ones that just have the cooler inserts. They're not the ones with the food. Okay, so we jumped right from that to purchase of the $29,800, which would have been the 2 Cushman golf carts with the cooler inserts. And we just upscaled the business for the Copper Nickel to a fancier model times 2, which is an additional, well, it's $45,800, an additional $16,000 to the taxpayers versus providing the same service that the Copper Nickel would have right now, which is just 2 golf carts with coolers. So I want to see something reflected. I want to see something where the Copper Nickel is going to, in good faith, or do something to help us help them. Because this in no way financially benefits the taxpayers when we buy these fancier golf carts and all revenue goes to the Copper Nickel. And I just want to say I'm very thankful the Copper Nickel is in the golf course. This is nothing against Copper Nickel. Thank you for being there. I hear very good things about you, but I would really like to see something come forward to see if we can get some financial assistance from them. We help you, help us. So, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Councilor Motley. Councilor Johnson?
I have a general tax question. When people purchase food or alcohol from the golf cart, there's still tax on that. We still get our 1% from those purchases on the golf course, correct? Thank you.
Okay, and approaching the copper nickel is something we will do, but to delay the purchase of these in order to get something on board with the advertisement things, those will come later on down the road. And of course, that agreement could be, we own the carts. We could advertise on the carts. We can get the revenue from those carts with respect to that. But right now, the motion on the floor is to purchase it without those mechanisms in place. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I believe at our last meeting, Sherry had some input on this, and I'm curious to know if she's on the line and would like to have input.
Sherry? Is she still on the line?
Sherry, can you hear me?
It was broken up, so what'd you say?
About the golf carts. We want to know your input.
Oh, okay, can you hear me okay?
Correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Mayor and council, thank you. Yes, I had suggested that maybe we take this out of the contingency fund. There is funds left in there. And then it's my understanding, work with Copper Nickel. They're willing to work with us with some sort of revenue share to pay those golf courts, or at least help us over time.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. Councilor Beyondich?
Do these need to be purchased by the end of the year?
And I think that's what Sherry didn't get to allude to, is that there is revenue, there's positive revenue in this year. And the contingency after the first of the year goes away. That just goes back into the general fund it doesn't stay in that line item anymore. And the same with the revenue for the golf course too, that just goes as part of the financial statement. So if we don't purchase this year, and if we want to continue talking, we would at least need to designate funds to do that. That's her concern of why she wants to get done this year. She wants to purchase in this year using the revenue, the positive revenue that they have, which is $30,000, and then whatever left out of contingency, and we'll keep working on a lease. We'll keep working on sponsorships with the beverage providers. You know, there's alcohol providers, there's soft drink providers that we could work out lease space or advertising space for.
So you could earmark this dollar amount into the next year. And I'm kind of...
Yeah, if I could step in, Mayor.
Yes, Sherry, please.
Yes, I would like to have it in this year's expenses.
If we're going to consider this, yeah, that's the push to talk about it this year.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich?
And I guess I'm not a golfer either, but I do know they're important, and I would be more comfortable with the $29,800 over the $45,800. And they'd still be new, they'd be on the course, and this would be a continuing conversation, and we would have the dollars for that without going into the contingency fund if we did the 29.8. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The motion on the floor is to purchase the upper tier course golf carts. For me, it's a long-term investment over time, and that difference of $18,000 over a 20-year period is worth the expenditure, because if you only have beverages served, you can't serve food, snacks, or anything else on those carts. What useful purpose does it serve? And I took this, the opportunity to talk with some of the other golf courses with respect to what they do. And so food service is very important on the course, particularly when you have these large tournaments. We have several coming in, even now coming down from Canada because of the Falls Country Club closed and one of the others. And so they're using our facility for their large events. So I'm comfortable moving forward with the motion as is on the table. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. This question's probably for Brian more than anybody else, Mr. Silber. Would it be prudent to buy one of each? And that would bring the total to $37,600.
If I just give my personal perspective, if you either have them both the same, because if you have golf cart service and beverage on one, and the other one you're serving food, and they're touring the golf courses around, And they want, where's the stack? Well, that's the other golf course has that, a cart has that one. Well, how come, yada, yada, yada. To answer Counselor Johnson's question, as the, Brian?
Ditto.
Okay, I appreciate that because like I said, I'm not a golfer, but, and I have a tendency to lead towards getting them both as an investment and making it happen because this is one of those times we're gonna say, oh, we should have, and we didn't. And I think that that's why I made the motion for the upgraded ones because they are a long-term investment. And if we keep them around for another 20 to 25 years, they'll pay for themselves easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. Counselor Beyondich, and then back over to Counselor Paulson. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you, and I'm sorry this is getting long, but these are questions that,
I got Mr. Migraine.
yes. So we had our meeting, was it last week? Did we have time to reach out to the Copper Nickel? Has there been conversation? There has been? And?
Brian?
Yes, I have spoken to the Copper Nickel. They are open to amending their lease to either include a monthly payment for the months that the carts are being used or a revenue split for when the carts are being used. So we have not dived into the numbers to determine what is best for us or them. Personally, I am leaning towards working out an agreement that would provide a revenue split from the money that is generated off of those carts. Because selfishly, I believe that we could get more money by doing a revenue split. For the Copper Nickel, it would also enable them, would be beneficial to them because it would encourage us to provide more events that those carts would be used for, which are your tournaments and your large-scale events. So the more those carts are out there, the more revenue that the carts are generating for the restaurant and the more revenue that they could potentially be generating for the city. But keep in mind that these type carts are an amenity on the course and adding to the golfing experience, drawing in more golfers to the golf course and more people into town.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. On to Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, thank you for that. I appreciate that conversation taking place. So what I can recall, I was just looking back in my email to try to find the contingency fund. Were we not short of the full amount on that 45.8? Weren't we some amount short? I can't find it. I'm sorry, Brett.
And that's where the revenue from the golf course comes in. They are positive at this moment.
So you would not only take from the contingency fund. Oh, go ahead, Sherry.
Yep. You want to jump in, Sherry?
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was the question?
The question was, were the funds? I was stating that we were going to use revenue from the golf course and contingency if needed to backfill.
Correct.
And Sherry, your recommendation, Sherry, would be then to make this expenditure in the year 2024 because we do have the
Correct.
surplus.
Yes, thank you, Counselor.
Okay, thank you so much. And then Mayor, if I may, I will vote to approve this because I understand the situation and I appreciate, Brian, you talking to the Copper Nickel, and I think it's a win-win for sure. But I'd really like to make it a priority for public safety regarding the residents that are affected by those golf balls. And I don't know if a motion can be made after the fact or what. I know we posted signs to protect people, but I have had so many calls from that residential area, and I know you have as well. And I really feel like that needs to be a priority with trying to find some funding going forward to create a barrier for those residents and people that are not only driving, but walking their dogs and children utilizing that area. So I will vote to go along with this, but I would really like a priority for some of that funding next year to be allocated, looked at and allocated toward public safety, keeping the residents safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'll have some additional information for clarity as well for that. But it has been moved and supported to purchase the golf cart. I think the motion was the $45,800 plus the taxes to be expended out of the contingency fund and the golf course revenue for fiscal year 2024. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries, thank you.
Mayor, if I
And I
might,
believe, please.
I would make a motion to authorize staff to open and renegotiate the lease at the Copper Nickel to include revenue sharing for the golf carts.
Thank you. You read my mind. Is there a motion? Is there support for that? Support by Counselor Beyondich. Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I believe there's already a motion and a second on the floor from a few months back to direct staff to find funding to accomplish that area along the fence line. I think, Rich, you have been searching for some more information. Is it prudent or necessary for us to have an additional motion with respect to this?
Yeah, that'd be great if we can make it a priority financially, even if that's the discussion in this year's budget. Anything we have left that we're going to commit to that.
I would make that motion. I mean, I'm not trying to put this above any other priority, but I do feel that we've heard enough, and when someone got hit hard with a golf ball and had to go to the emergency room, we do need to take some action. And the $15,000 that we spent on that fencing only was a partial, the other part is still not fixed. So I was very surprised that that amount of money only covered that short span. So I would like, I'll make that motion. Thank you.
A motion by Councilor Paulson to direct staff to make a priority for the addressing the public safety issue or the area along the number 2 fairway for safety concerns with respect to the fencing and the protecting of the residents along that line. So it's moved and supported by Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I'll move to item number 9, personnel. Item 9.9, approve the resolution to hire outdoor rink attendants.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Johnson. Is there support? Support. By Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Oh, man. Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10 under personnel, approve the resolution to hire a digital multimedia technician.
Support.
To approve by Councilor Freely, been supported by Councilor Johnson. Further discussion, looking for some clarity on this. Is this an additional position? Are we asking for somebody to take on additional duties and responsibilities, or designating somebody who's already on staff to do this?
If you recall, this was a branch off of the recreation assistant that deals specifically with the audiovisual and the scoreboards.
Yep, thank you. I was looking for that answer. Councilor Motley?
I thought we already hired somebody for this position.
We have done a resolution for 2 people, only one accepted the job. And so we still need a couple more. There's a lot of games that have scoreboard usage, and we need somebody that can sit and do the scoreboard.
Are these casual or are these part-time?
These are casual.
So 2 more additional in addition to one we already approved?
Correct.
Okay.
So then we have high school girls, high school boys, youth hockey games that all require scoreboard usage. And then we have the random audiovisual usage in the ballroom that needs somebody to sit and use that too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moved and supported. Further discussion. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Did we agree that it was up to a specific FTE?
It was going to be part of the recreation assistant FTE. The number, I think it's 10 FTEs.
Okay, so we're putting it under the recreation assistant. We just changed that job description. And then we are still working in conjunction with Rockridge. Is that correct for this?
Yes.
These students?
Yep.
Okay.
These students were recommended by.
Okay, very good. So a combination of these 3 students will be sharing in this job performance with the scoreboard and audio and visual. Is it just going to be scoreboard, or is it going to be throughout the convention center as well?
Brian?
It is throughout the whole convention center. In full transparency, one of these is not a high school student. One of these is actually somebody that I'm super excited about. It is a former DJ who has a lot of experience, not only with production and sound, but also lighting, that's willing to come on. So with that person's leadership, I really hope that we will be able to take our game day experience for those attending games at the high school level and even the youth level up a notch, making our venue even more impressive than it currently is.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Just real quick, before you vote, who's ever doing this, doing outstanding work, a lot of good comments about that. And then after we vote on this, I have one quick comment for the general public, and thank you for information. It has been moved and supported to approve the resolution to hire a digital multimedia technician. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Just as a note, a couple of weeks ago, we got a lot of calls when I went to these games about not being able to hear the national anthem, and the audio speakers were, not doing very well. And Brian had indicated that we have some issues with some of the speakers there, and some. I think that the resolution is the group that's coming in to repair them will be here like on December the 28th. Is that correct? 26th. Thank you, Brian. So for the general's public edification with respect to that. We voted on that, correct? Okay, move to the next item on the agenda under personnel is the appointment of a fire marshal position. Interviews were conducted on December the 16th, 2024, and we have a resolution.
We need to go back to item number 11.
We need to bypass number 11, not talk about
You
it?
did bypass number 11.
Okay, well, bypass number 11.
You did. You need to go back one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Again. I apologize for being remiss. Item number 11, approve the resolution to hire a county clerk 1.
So moved.
Support.
Moved to approve by Counselor Johnson and supported by Counselor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Motley.
Britt, I'd sent you an email yesterday. Can you tell me the total accruity monetarily in overtime for the 2 accountants in the office since the third one left in, was it March? March during the strike? I couldn't find it actually, or I would have just said it.
I'm sorry.
What was the question?
The amount of overtime, the dollar amount of overtime from last.
Since we lost the third accountant, with just 2 running the office now. Yeah.
It's not that much.
No, Megan's, one of them was $3,128.82, and the other one has taken it in comp time, which is 119 hours of comp time.
And may I say something? The majority of that is going to be elections.
Is it increased during a president, if you
Yes.
don't mind?
Yeah, please, Counselor Motley, continue.
Okay, so is overtime increased generally every 4 years during a presidential election or just every 2 years in every election?
And I think Pam can explain this a little more, but the state changed the way we open now. We used to just be open late on Monday and the Saturday, and I think now it's extra time, isn't it, Pam, this year?
Yes, thank you, Britt. So the requirements are a little more hours during the presidential. On the every 2 year during the regular election, it probably won't be as hectic as it is during presidential election. So there could be potentially in 2026 additional overtime,
Okay,
but probably not as much as it was this year.
so in my head, I see dollar amounts and I hear $3,000-ish overtime total since March. And another individual, and I want to thank these 2 for working hard, working with 2 people, and for me, I see in my head, I'm thinking more with less. What is the position that is possibly going to be approved, the accounting clerk one, what is the total cost to the taxpayer, including benefits? Is Sherry available?
Did you get that, Sherry?
No, I'm sorry, something about benefits.
Yeah, do you know the dollar amount for the employee if we were to hire an accounting clerk one?
Oh, dearie, it's on that posting. I'm so sorry. It's much less than what we budgeted for the accounting clerk 3 this year, so it is much less. It's a level 1. Oh, here, I'd have to go back to the posting. I'm sorry. Give me time to look that up. What I could do is probably ask Brianna that posting. I'm just going to do a rough estimate, okay?
I do have it, Sherry, here. It's after probation, it's $30.26 per hour. During probation, it's $27.23, which is the first 6 months.
What is the, where I'm kind of getting is, what's the position going to cost us, I guess, total, in, I'm sorry, in 2025? I should have asked this ahead of time, I apologize. A rough estimate. I'm just trying to prove we can save a ton of money. Long story short, these two individuals have done a great job working with just the two of them. And I'm trying to prove that we don't need to add a third additional person into City Hall. That's where I'm coming from.
We do. I mean, they've done a great job of meeting the deadlines we have, but they have not been able to do everything. And I can attest to that, that there are things we have not accomplished. And I know we have a citizen who comes in monthly on a data practice request and looks at our financials and makes a very long list of things we are not accomplishing, but they're not time-sensitive things. So we haven't done them because they're not time-sensitive. The time-sensitive stuff, such as payroll, accounts payable, or bond payments, we have been getting done. Bank reconciliations, those we've been completing. But some of the background financial things that normally we do, we ideally would do monthly, but we haven't done, because we will get them done before the audit, but we aren't going to get them done before the end of the year, and we aren't going to get them done monthly like we're supposed to. So there is work that is not being, it's just nobody sees it except for those that are doing the background financials.
Okay, and then.
Just the hourly rate alone, based on 2,080 hours, is $62,400, and you would have to add benefits onto that.
Yeah, so it's a easy 100,000. Easy, that's always. So when they switch to a 10-hour shift, does that make them more available to do things during off hours with less people coming in and visiting?
Yes and no.
Would that help? Has that helped?
It did in the summer. It did help in the summer. Not all of our staff works 8 to 4:30. So once we're open at 7, they know we're open at 7, and they still come to visit. It's.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah.
So roughly 95,000. It's just under 100,000.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Motley. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say what Britt said, just knowing what goes on there, that the essential work is being done due to time frame, and so much other work is not being done that would. I'm guessing that once we get the third person or we get close to the audit, there'll be a lot more overtime to accomplish all the tasks that weren't accomplished in the routine maintenance of our financials. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. One of the suggestions at the Personnel Committee meeting actually came from our Finance Director, Sherry, was that we could potentially do closed office hours time so that they would have a closed window from X amount of time to X amount of time so that work wouldn't be interrupted or, couldn't be interrupted during those hours, and that it would be work basically uninterrupted with either the public or staff or people coming in. So that was one other suggestion to try to alleviate need for overtime, an overtime situation. And I don't know, Britt, if that could be implemented beginning of the new year.
It's something we definitely can talk about. The concern that we had is that, if you tell everybody you can't come in until 10 at 10 o'clock, you're gonna have every department head there with a stack of POs, and here you go, so it's just gonna compound the work of the day. Yes, it's something we definitely can look at and talk about.
So I think
a great
that's something
idea.
maybe just a topic for
Yeah.
discussion
Yep,
going
100%.
forward. But to alleviate some of that overtime, I think that's why the Personnel Committee felt that we were supportive of putting the clerk one in place. But, I did have questions in the past many years. That office downstairs has functioned with 2 people. And I believe it was until we brought on an intern that stayed there for quite a while, until she moved into other areas within the city. But down in that office, that it had operated with 2 individuals. Now, in further discussion as well, with more staff with the Iron Trail Motors Event Center has kind of changed the workload a little bit, I would imagine. So I feel like that's why we agreed to that. And I know it is an expenditure, but I feel that maybe if we could have a discussion on the office hour timing and maybe allow the employees to get some of their busy work done without, uninterrupted, that might really help on overtime within that department. So I guess that's all I had to add, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. It has been moved and supported to approve the resolution to hire accounting clerk number 1. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Freely.
I think that, we're talking about the 2 people that are in the office, but we're forgetting that a lot of this has been assumed also by Britt and Sherry additionally. So now 4 people are involved with the tasks that are involved and the burden of those tasks. It's not just those 2 people. And that's part of the reason most of this has gone on as smoothly as it has, is that 4 people have stepped up. And I know we talked about attrition in terms of like when we have an opening that may not need to be filled, but I think it's become apparent, at least to me, from the conversations at the Personnel Committee and with the people involved, that this person is pretty viable in this office at this point in time. So the discussion today has kind of been focused on the 2 people in the office, and we're kind of glossing over the fact that both Britt and Sherry have picked up significant slack as well. So that's why I'm moving in forward with the recommendation for the hopefully highly qualified person that you found for this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Any other questions, comments, and concerns before we move to a vote? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the resolution to hire County Clerk 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please, Pam.
Counselor Beyondich is absent. Johnson?
Aye.
Caranzelli? Yes. Cuffey?
Aye.
Motley?
No.
Friedlieb?
Aye.
Paulson?
Motion passes 5-1 with 1 absent. Thank you. Now we'll move to item number 12, appointment of the fire marshal position. Interviews that were held on December 16th, 2024. This is the 3rd fire marshal, and the last one resigned. Now this one, and now we have another one on staff. This is give me some additional information, please, Britt.
We were not able to have interviews yesterday as we have no internal applicants, so we will go external now.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments about the fire marshal position or internal applicants? They'll be moving outside to seek one. In the interim, the state fire marshal will be conducting the investigations with respect to this until we determine whether or not we still want to hire a fire marshal position. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. That just kind of led me to a question. Is that if we are going to have difficulty maybe finding this person, is it possible to contract out the service? And maybe share
That's
with
something we'll look at, yeah.
Hibbing or another larger fire department?
I think we have to, and as we kind of mentioned earlier, I think in all aspects of public safety, we got to start getting creative, and I think
Yep.
it's as we've heard from our chiefs, it's a specialty niche, and it's a different field than putting out a fire. It's the backside of it, the investigative side of the fire, so it's.
And there's a lot of schooling or classes or training, I suppose, they need to take. So, I mean, if this is something that, should we bring it back for discussion on possibly doing
After
an
the
outreach
first
for
next year, if we come
contract?
back to committee of the whole, I'll talk to the chiefs and we'll come back with some discussion ideas, some ideas of things, if that's okay with you guys.
That sounds
We were
very
hoping
reasonable.
to get them, instead of having to cancel the training for next year, we were hoping to get the person in there. Since we didn't have anybody, we'll just go ahead and cancel it.
Okay. And what happens in the interim, what you're saying then is the state of Minnesota would come in and do any investigation should we have a large-scale incident?
100%.
And historically, our fire marshal will work with the state fire marshal's office for big investigations, and they would bring somebody up. There are only like a few of them in the state of Minnesota that travel all over. So they come and assist in conjunction with that. In the event you don't have a fire marshal, and you do have a fire that's considered to be suspicious by the fire chief and the staff, that they need a fire marshal to come up to investigate, they would secure the scene, rope it off, and the state fire marshal representative would come up and do the preliminary investigation.
Okay, so maybe just,
It's
should we
maybe,
move
the
that
chief just
to,
emailed me and said if it's okay, they're gonna do another 2-week posting, over there and come back to the committee of the whole with some discussion
Okay,
items, if that's okay
perfect.
with the council.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of other things, not just fire. They do pre-planning, they do juvenile fire setter program. So there's a lot of things that they do that in the interim, we'll just kind of hang on and come back with some ideas, if that's okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Britt. Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Okay, any other questions, comments with respect to the fire marshal position? Okay, thank you. Move to other items on the agenda. Item number 13, approve the 2025 tobacco license for Holiday Station LLC doing business as Circle K.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Motley. Is there support? By Councilor Friedrich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 14, approve the 2025 tobacco license for Holiday Corman LLC doing business as the Holiday Station Store.
moved?
Moved to approve by Councilor Paulson and supported by Councilor Friedlieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Approve the 2025 secondhand goods license for William Speltz doing business as Twice as Nice.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Motley. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 16, approve Sarah DeBretto for the Housing Redevelopment Authority Board for the remainder of a 3-year term ending 11/22 of 26.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Friedrich. Is there support? By Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 17, approve the transient merchant license for Clerman LLC doing business as Grilled Cheese Galore. Move to approve by Councilor Johnson, supported by,
For discussion.
for support, do you support for further discussion? Are you supporting for?
Yep.
Okay, support by Councilor Paulson for further discussion. Further discussion, Councilor
I just
Paulson.
want to clarify, this is for 2025, there's no date,
Yes.
or is it for 2024?
Mayor?
Yes.
It starts the day it's approved. They don't run
So it's a
annually
1 year from the
From
day
the
approved?
date it's-
Okay, so they can do this
for 1
current
year.
year, because I know they were
They can start, yes, they called and didn't know they had needed
Well,
one.
that's okay, but I wanted to make sure that they were covered in the winter if they want to do it in the winter.
they
Okay,
wanna be
very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 18, set a public hearing for the cannabis ordinance. A move to approve the setting of a public hearing to follow for the cannabis ordinance. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Motley. Further discussion? Councilor Paulson. I know we have a moratorium on that until July 17th of 2025, but we're looking at the ordinance moving forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering if we could set this for after a committee of the whole, so we could, I mean, maybe a week later, whatever, however much time later, just so we can process and understand the implications of this ordinance. Maybe Brian can go through that with us, and just so we can absorb what we're passing or what we're going to a public hearing for.
Yeah, I think it's
Would
important.
that be okay?
I think that's important. Set the public hearing. We can set that. We're just approving the setting of the public hearing.
Right.
And we can set that once we're comfortable and have all the information we need moving forward. Or
Mayor?
is that not correct?
We are potentially scheduling it for January 14th before the council meeting.
Okay.
That's our-
so
that's the
Would
plan.
we have this on the committee of the whole agenda then, so we could go through the,
Yep, everything was emailed to you last week for review. And yes.
Get any comments from the
so
council?
it will go on the committee of the whole for discussion? I just want to be able.
Yes.
I can read through it, but I think I need clarification on a few items
We need
that I don't
clarification on a few
understand.
items that I don't understand.
And maybe,
Posting does have to be in the paper.
okay, so that gives us enough time to review at the committee of the whole. Very good, thank you.
And I think Jenny's been working on a map showing you, there is that restriction around schools and other zones, so we'll get that map for you too, to show you where they could go.
I think I'm going to defer my statements to the committee of the whole meeting, so not to raise the ire too soon. Okay, so is there a motion to support for that, to set the public hearing on January 14th? Okay, so we'll set the public hearing, we'll set the time, but the public hearing is for January 14th, 2025.
Move.
Was it already moved and supported? Yes. Okay, further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Number 19, Steve Rockala regarding the public access television contract renewal.
He's on his way here. He should be here any second, actually.
I see.
Want to go on?
Okay, we'll move on to item 20. We'll hold 19 in abeyance until Mr. Rockala arrives. Review of the proposed contract for concessionaire services. Well, we might have to close this meeting, right? So let's patiently await.
And the reason if I may, Mayor, the reason we want to close this meeting is we're at the point that we need to develop a real estate offer. What lease agreement do we want? So that's why we're going to close the meeting to discuss that dollar amount.
Of course, thank you. So Mr. Rockwell will come here in a minute, but in the interim, we don't have to take, we were getting ready to take a break, Mr. Rockwell, but here you appear. So you're on the agenda right now, so come on forward and turn the podium light to green, and please state your name for the record, and welcome to the city council meeting.
My name is Stephen Rockala. Thank you, council, for having me here today. I understand I'm here to answer some questions.
Okay, thank you. First, before we get to that, I'm sure there'll be some questions from the council regarding the contract. I just want to once again reiterate publicly to you and your staff for all the hard work you've done for us, in the private sector. Not from the elected body, but from citizens who you've come in nights and days and weekends to help facilitate public access to very special events, and primarily for the, I'm going to give you the one example, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, where you came and did phenomenal work trying to get that recorded on public access TV. So just want to publicly say thank you for that. That was very important. And all
you,
the other
Mayor.
things you've done for us as well.
Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about Mr. Rockola's contract? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't actually have questions per se. I just wanted to kind of go over the contract, and it's basically the same as it's been.
Yep.
Do you recommend anything that needs to change going forward that we could be doing differently before entering
Not this year, but I know the Cable Commission, we have it on agenda for January to start planning on some changes they'd like to see, so that will come in next year's contract.
So then this will, okay, so you're okay with the current language in this
Correct.
contract? And then, Steve, I guess I did have one question that I brought up the last meeting, was that how are we collecting any of those broadcast and service computer editor processing fees, camera set? Are we actually collecting that? And is there if we're not, is there something the city can do to help assist in the collection of those dollars?
Yeah, I collect those, and then I pay them, I pay the studio rent quarterly, and I pay the equipment fee rent at the end of the year.
So those are working okay
Yeah.
currently?
But in the past, each of the other cities that we serve have been the ones paying those, but they've been adding their own equipment into things, so those rental fees have been going
So
down.
those are going down anyway?
Correct.
Okay, and then when we've been discussing MediaCom being in breach of the contract, having their office location in Hibbing and not being located in Virginia, do you have any recommendations of how this council moves forward with trying to help and assist residents in?
I know it's been a big pain point.
Pardon?
I know it's been a big pain point, especially because they no longer have an office here in the city. In the discussions I've had with CTC, it's in their roadmap to be able to service this area, but I don't think they're at a point where they have the capacity to do that yet.
For that yet.
Correct. I know they're in Hibbing, but once they get out here, maybe, and then I know the Cable Commission's goal is to have them be the one to provide and tailor the services, because I don't think we trust that they're providing accurate finances and data and everything, so. And them being the only company that services this area, they're kind of in the spot for them. You know, just our discussions we've had, it's just been a pain point, so just dealing with them.
And I was unable to attend the last Cable Commission meeting, but I did have a resident discuss, which I sent the email forward, it was in the minutes, that the rates have increased just
With crazy amounts.
astronomically. And those people are living basically on fixed incomes in some of our apartment complexes here. And I'm just wondering if the council could work on something. I mean, I know they're a private entity that's basically a monopoly here in Virginia, but if there's something that we can work towards, is there anything legal where we can cap, like, as a monopoly, can we actually cap? You know, you can't increase more than 5% or consumer price index, or?
I will add something. I've been talking with HPAT, and Ron over there is involved more in the legislative side with public access, and there are some current legislative sessions right now going on to discuss some future protection of public access.
For that.
And basing it more off of internet subscriptions versus cable subscriptions. And if that does go through, that would solve that point.
Totally solve.
And there is, like Roku has been updating things to add public access channels on their streaming services, so, which is really nice. So there are just some natural workarounds that are happening at the moment, which are beneficial to us, and it would even help with our funding if some of that legislation can go through, because then we can hire more staff to provide more services to the community. So, because right now we run things pretty tight.
Do you have any? And then I just want to make.
Brian, can you answer any legal questions with respect to Councilor Paulson's question?
Thank you, Mayor. The answer is I don't have an answer, but I'll look into it.
Okay.
Just off the top of my head,
I can see this starting to become a problem now, and they really are. They've been in breach of contract for, I think, a year. How long have they been in Hibbing? Or they closed this office?
Couple years,
Yeah,
I don't
it's been
know,
at
I
least
think
2
it's been a
years.
while. Mhm.
And we just extended that contract, so I feel like we really need to work on that and make it if we can make it more affordable, excellent. And then when you had, how are we doing downstairs with, have we done any painting or getting ready or any of that for the
Yeah.
new upcoming?
The city's been doing it, just slowly emptying and recycling all the old equipment, and about 99% of that is gone. And then the next step is the city will be repainting the whole studio, because we have 2 groups that are waiting to start using it.
So that's still going to happen?
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for coming in. I just wanted to go over and make sure we didn't need to do any changes if you felt that something needed to be changed.
No, we're good with this year, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mayor.
council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rockla. If we're going to be, we taking action on this today? Thank you, Mr. Rockla. Just hang for a moment. This is item number 19 on the agenda regarding the public access television contract renewal. We've had Mr. Rolock here presenting the information and answering our questions. We're looking for a motion on the floor regarding the renewal of Mr. Rockla's contract for public access. Move to approve by Councilor Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Rockla, very much.
Again, council, thanks again, Mayor.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you. Okay, we have the items 20 and 21 before we move, and we'll be going into closed session. Is there anybody have any other questions or comments moving forward? Any questions from the audience before we take a quick break and then move into closed session? Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge that this is Councilor Baronzelli's last official meeting unless we schedule another one. And just, I'd like to thank you, Carl, for your friendship and your being my seat partner. And I just wish you the best. And we'll see you after all right. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you. And then after we have this closed session, we're going to reopen it. Before we close the meeting, we have a few comments to make as well. So thank you. Thank you, Councilor Johnson. All right. Okay. Let's take a quick break before we move into closed session. Thank you, everybody.